I've often wondered why a major triad affects us in a neutral or semi-positive way, and why a minor triad affects us in a more sorrowful or sad way. Why we associate happy type songs with major chords, and why we associate sad songs with minor chords. When I was teaching children's classes years and years ago, I figured that would be an opportunity to ask the children how they experience chords without giving them any hint that a major or minor triad would affect them a certain way. So maybe having a group of 10 kids along with their parents, I would play a triad, just something as simple as this, and I would say to them, is that a sad sound or is that a happy sound? And they would listen and they would say, it's happy. And I would say, okay, I'm going to play another sound. Is this a sad sound or a happy sound? Another major triad in a different key. And they would respond the same way. It was a happy sound. And then I would say, and this, is this a happy sound? And right away they would respond that it's a sad sound. I did this over and over again, and the response was as predictable as you could imagine. From time to time, these groups of kids would invite their grandparents, and the grandparents were from every part of the world, from the interiors of Zimbabwe or Nigeria or India or Pakistan. I'd have grandparents visiting, or China. And in as much as those countries, their folk music and their more common music definitely was not our Western scale or our Western type of music, I would do the same kind of test. Sometimes their children would translate for the parents, for the grandparents who were visiting. Same response. They would smile. They would be asked through a translator, is this a happy song or a sad song? And the response was predictable. Even when this type of scale, the Western scale, is not part of their musical culture or musical heritage, they still responded in a predictable manner. Major chords sound positive, minor chords sound negative. So I went back and I explored the overtone series. The overtone series is a system or a theory developed by Pythagoras, which postulates that given a size of a string, let's take a low C. That's called the fundamental tone, the fundamental. Within that string vibrating, it vibrates naturally also halfway across. So the string divides, the string is vibrating all the way across its length, but it's also creating a tone halfway across its length. And that tone, even though we can't hear it very well, almost not at all, is in fact an octave higher. If we take that same string, the same fundamental length, the same fundamental tone string, within that sound, there is also a vibration happening along thirds of its length. A third of its length, you would have this tone. That would be a fifth, an octave and a fifth above. If you take the same string and you cut it into 4 equal spaces, as happens on that fundamental tone, happening through this natural phenomena, the tone is 2 octaves higher. If you cut it into 5 pieces, which happens naturally on the fundamental tone, it is 2 octaves and a third higher. So, theoretically, not even theoretically, now it's a law, a physical law. When you hear one string vibrating, even though we cannot hear it very well, if at all, within that tone are these tones. Fundamental, first overtone, second overtone, third overtone, and the fourth overtone. A major triad. Therefore, a major triad is in fact a natural phenomena. A minor triad is not a natural phenomena based on the vibrating frequencies of a single object. What this compelled me to believe then is the response we feel in major and minor chords is not at all cultural or ethnic, but it's in fact a part of our physiological development. There's no other explanation for it. I love that. I love that. Because even in cultures that don't use what they call the well-tempered scale, the 12-tone scale, they still experience a major and minor triad in the same manner. Whether it is a root position chord, an inverted chord, or a second inverted chord, still a minor chord will elicit that response. Now, within the overtone series, there is also an object called a sympathetic vibration, or what they call harmonic resonance. Harmonic resonance is when you play a fundamental tone, any object that is exactly 1/2 the size or 1/2 the mass of that object will automatically vibrate based on the harmonic series, which is any object a half will sound, any object a half size will sound this note. Any object a third the size, this note, a fourth the size, this note, etc. An example is, I'm going to play C2 on the piano. I release the damper, which allows it to vibrate. I'm going to play the fundamental, and you will hear the overtone. That tone is this note. It wasn't struck, but through sympathetic vibration or harmonic resonance, it elicited a response. Now, if I play the G, this is the equivalent of a third the size of the fundamental. Listen. There is an octave and a fifth. Now, just for the fun of it, I'm going to play a note that is not part of that harmonic spectrum. Let's play an F sharp. I'm releasing the damper, which will allow that note to vibrate freely, and I'm going to play the fundamental low C. Nothing. I'm going to play a D. Nothing. I'm going to play 2 octaves C, the equivalent of the fundamental note divided into 4 equally spaced pieces. I hope you can hear it. There it is. But if I play a note that's unrelated to that harmonic series, for example, A flat, nothing. Again, the C above it, you can hear the tone. Now, what are the practical applications to this phenomenon? I'll leave us with one interesting event that occurred. In the late 60s, I believe, or the early 70s, Lockheed Aircraft designed a passenger jet called the L-1011. After a few months of flying, one day, a motor, while the plane was in flight, an engine fell off the pylon. The pylon being that huge bracket, that aerodynamic bracket that holds the jet engine in place. And then when they grounded the fleet of L-1011s, and they discovered stress fractures in almost all of the pylons. What they discovered, which is remarkable since they didn't take this into account when they designed the pylon, is that pylon was a proportional size of the engine tone, meaning when the jet engines revolved and created a certain tone at a certain speed, it created a vibration or a tone that produced a tone that created harmonic resonance, which affected the pylon being exactly 1/3 the mass of the jet engine. So that the pylon was in fact vibrating, and vibrating like a string on a piano was vibrating, and through that vibration, undue stress happened to the metal. So metal fatigue set in far earlier than they anticipated in the life of that pylon. That was a beautiful, such as it is, a beautiful example of what harmonic resonance can do. Objects around your room, if you play a certain note, if you go around the room, sometimes you'll hear just the slightest little buzz. Sometimes people think it's a problem in the piano. It's not. This means that there's an object within the room that is an exact proportion of that tone, of that 5-foot string, which elicits or produces the harmonic resonant or sympathetic vibration. When you think about it this way, perhaps every object in the universe is affected in one manner or another by these wave frequencies and the harmonic resonance caused by various cosmic events, caused by this universal or cosmic music. Perhaps in our evolution, our bodies, our development responds. We were developed through any myriad of possibilities. The sun, tide, gravity, and when you think about the harmonic spectrum, overtones, that also played a part in our development, i.e., we respond in a natural manner to a major triad. Thank you.